Hey, what's up folks, how's it going? This is Watch. Hope you guys are all doing well, and today we're going to be doing a head-to-head specification comparison between the new iPhone 12 Pro Max versus the Samsung Note 20 Ultra. Now, today was the announcement. We got whole new iPhones, including a new array of 5G iPhones, iPhone 12, iPhone 12 mini, which looks really cool. I'm kind of a fan of going back to smaller phones that are less obtrusive compared to these larger smartphones. Now, not only do we have a new generation iPhone 12 Pro, but we have the Pro Max, which is the biggest, baddest, the one that we're going to talk about specifically today, and compare it against the Note 20 Ultra to see which one comes out on top. We're going to be taking a look at the overall design, form factor, durability, the display configuration, the internal SoC configuration, as well as talk about the big thing, which is cameras, battery life, and talk about special features at the end. So if you're interested to see which smartphone kind of comes out on top from a Surface specification level, it's a perfect video for you. So let's get right into it. Now, firstly, all the new generation iPhone 12s have 5G network connectivity, like many of the premium grade Android smartphones, including the Note 20 Ultra. That means that you can connect to sub 6 GHz and millimeter wavelength 5G networks that Apple claims in ideal situations will get you up to 4 gigabits a second in terms of download speed. Samsung claims that you can get up to 7.5 gigabits a second. That's probably in Korea, where they have some of the best 5G networks on the planet. Now, the overall performance is highly dependent upon your specific location and the type of carrier that you're using. Both systems have the ability to switch between LTE and 5G networks depending upon your signal strength, and you also have Wi-Fi 6 enabled for local area connections. Now, the overall design of the iPhone 12 Pro Max is pretty much the same across all the new generation iPhone 12s. You're looking at a squared off slate design, very reminiscent of the old iPhone 4, as well as the new generation iPad Pros and Air. Now, from a packaging perspective, I think this new generation of iPhones is definitely superior than the previous gen, in the sense that you're looking at a larger overall displays, slightly thinner bezels, and pretty much the same form factor and footprint. For example, on the new iPhone 12 Pro Max, you're looking at a larger display than the previous iteration at 6.7 inches versus 6.5 inches, yet we still maintain the same overall footprint as the 11 Pro Max, which is definitely cool to see. Now, in terms of comparing the size of the Note 20 Ultra and the 12 Pro Max, they're actually very similar in terms of overall footprint, basically around 160 millimeters length, about 177 or 78 millimeters in terms of width. Keep in mind that the Samsung does have the slightly larger display at around 6.9 inches. There is, however, a difference in terms of thickness and weight. The iPhone is thinner at around 7.4 millimeters versus the Note is around 8 millimeters, and the Note is a little bit lighter at around 208 grams versus 228 grams on the iPhone. Both are made out of similar materials, mainly glass back to front, and a stainless steel frame that encases the antennas for both smartphones. Now, when it comes to durability, when we take a look at the glass technology on both platforms, both are actually using Corning Gorilla Glass technology. Basically, we have the Victus glass on the Note 20 Ultra, which is kind of the latest, greatest glass technology commercially available for a third-party smartphone manufacturer. On the Apple side, they actually partnered up with Corning to create what they call a ceramic shield. It's a high-temperature process of growing nano-ceramic crystals within the glass matrix itself, and supposedly it's going to improve drop durability up to 4 times the conventional smartphone glass. Now, certainly this would be an awesome video to do, and perhaps we can definitely do a side-by-side comparison in terms of which glass is more durable. Let me know if you guys want to see that. Beyond that, both have official IP68 certification for both dust and water resistance, which typically means that the phone can survive 1.5 meters deep for around 30 minutes. iPhone goes a little bit beyond that, and Apple states that it can actually go up to 6 meters deep for 30 minutes. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this comparison, and that is the displays. Both, like many of the previous generation, are using organic LED technology. That's going to be excellent in terms of black levels, contrast ratio, and everything like that. They're obviously different in terms of size, resolution, and overall brightness output, and even refresh rate. On the iPhone, we're using the Super Retina XDR display, has a native resolution of 2778 by 1284. PPI count is about about 458, and in terms of maximum brightness output, you're looking at over 1200 nits on its high setting. Now, the resolution on the AMOLED Samsung panel is rated at 3088 by 1440, giving it a slightly higher pixel density count, about 496 ppi. And keep in mind that we also have that larger display at around 6.9 inches. The display is also very bright. Independent measurements have shown that at its brightest setting, you're outputting over 1600 nits. And on top of that, one of my favorite features is we have a 120 hertz refresh rate, which is double the 60 hertz refresh rate we find on even the best version of the iPhone 12. Now, internally, both are running on completely different SoC platforms. On the North American version of the Note 20 Ultra, we're running a Snapdragon 865 Plus. That is an octa-core 7nm chip that's comprised of an 8-core CPU with effectively 4 performance cores and 4 high-efficiency cores, as well as an Adreno 650 GPU. This SoC has been around for quite some time now, and based on our experience with the Samsung S20, even the older generation A13 Bionic processor found on the iPhone 11 was actually faster in some scenarios than the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865. So I'm pretty confident that the new generation 814 Bionic that Apple has introduced with the new generation iPhone 12 is definitely going to be faster. It's a 5nm chip, has 11.8 billion transistors, and it's a 40% faster than the previous generation A13. You have a 6-core CPU comprised of 2 performance and 4 high-efficiency cores, as well as 4 core graphics. They say the graphics performance is 50% better than the previous iteration. They've also doubled the cores on the neural engine that allows for 80% faster improvements in machine learning algorithms. It can do up to 11 trillion operations a second, and they've beefed up the image signal processing unit. That way the camera can process faster things like deep fusion and smart HDR3. Now, in terms of memory and storage configuration, I think this is where the Samsung still has an advantage over here. We do have a lot more RAM, 12 gigabytes on the S20 Ultra versus most likely 4 gigabytes on the iPhone. And in terms of storage configuration, both are very similar, basically a range between 128 to 512 gigabytes. But like many other Android phones, the Samsung has the ability to expand your long-term storage via the microSD expansion slot that's still there. Now, moving on, let's talk about the biggest and certainly the most complex feature set on both of these two smartphones, and that is the camera configuration. Now, even on the iPhone 12 Pro Max, it's completely different than every other camera found on the standard iPhone Pro as well as the standard iPhone 12 lineup. Basically, we have a whole new telephoto and wide camera, something unique to this specific larger iPhone. Now, to keep things as simple as possible, we're going to take a look at the triple camera array at the rear of both devices and then take a look at the front side so we have a better understanding of how these two stack up against each other. Now, firstly, in terms of the ultra-wide camera, both are 12 megapixels, both are 13 millimeters, and give you the same 120 field of view. There is a difference in terms of actual sensor size. The sensor size is slightly larger on the Samsung. It's rated at about a half 0.55 inch versus a third 0.6 inch sensor size on the iPhone, and the f-stop is slightly larger on the Samsung, rated at f2.2 versus f2.8 on the iPhone. Now, from the looks of things right now, the ultra-wide cameras don't have any kind of phase detection autofocusing or optical stabilization, which is perfectly fine because they're so wide in the first place. Those things are really not that necessary. The biggest difference between the two is definitely on the standard wide cameras. Both are 26 millimeters, so they give you the same field of view, but an entirely different resolution. 12 megapixels on the iPhone versus 108 on the Samsung. And in terms of the lens configuration, we're looking at a maximum aperture of about f1.6 on the iPhone versus 1.8 on the Samsung. And in conjunction with the larger overall pixel size, you're probably going to get better overall low light performance on the iPhone. Certainly the larger pixels and the larger lens will get more photons in each individual pixel compared to the higher resolution sensor that we have on the Samsung. But potentially the Samsung could render out more sharper sharper details. Of course, we'll do a side-by-side comparison to determine which one actually looks better in most kind of every day-to-day scenario. But both also have phase detection autofocusing, or what Apple calls their 100% focus pixels. And we have optical stabilizations on both platforms, with the exception that on the iPhone 12 Pro Max, the wide camera actually utilizes something called sensor shift. So that actually moves the sensor instead of the heavier lens, which allows for finer adjustments on the XY axis. And they can do up to 5,000 micro adjustments in order to resolve sharper, clearer photos and smoother video as well. Now, the telephoto cameras on both of them are similar in the sense that we have the same resolution, 12 megapixels, and we effectively have the same optical zoom range of 5 times from the widest camera to the most zoomiest telephoto camera, if that's a word. And on the Note 20 Ultra, we're effectively using a digital hybrid zoom technology, which will effectively give you 50 times digital zoom versus 12 times digital zoom on the 12 Pro Max. And in terms of most things, we still have optical stabilization on both platforms, as well as phase detection autofocusing. The other interesting thing is about both platforms is they're using a laser-based kind of LiDAR scanner, which will allow for more accurate and faster focusing, but also will map out 3D objects and also improved AR experiences as well. Now, from a video recording standpoint, both can obviously shoot 4K at 60 frames per second, with the exception that Samsung can actually go up to 8K resolution at 24 frames per second. Now, it's hard to watch 8K content without a 8K display, but it's a cool kind of pioneering technology that Samsung has always introduced with their Note line, and this is certainly no exception. In terms of the actual 4K video, the cool thing about the new generation iPhone is it actually can record 10-bit quality video and can render and output that in Adobe Vision in real time, 60 frames per second. This is a really hard thing to do if you're going to do it manually, but with the new A14 Bionic, this is actually possible. This is probably going to get you better dynamic range, higher details in the shadows and highlights. Obviously, you can record HDR video on the Samsung, but it is at 8 bits compared to 10 bits on the iPhone. And when we're taking a look at 1080p slow motion capabilities, you're looking at 240 frames per second on both platforms, but the Samsung can go up to 960 frames per second on a 720p setting. Now, in terms of the specs on the front-facing cameras on the Samsung, we're looking at 10 megapixel stills versus 12 megapixels on the iPhone, and the sensor is slightly larger on the Samsung. It's at 3.2 inches versus 3.6 inches on the iPhone, f2.2 maximum aperture on both cameras. And in terms of autofocusing, we do have dual pixel phase detection autofocusing on the Samsung versus we're using contrast base, I believe, on the iPhone still. And when it comes to video, 4K at 60 frames per second on both, with the exception that we can do 1080p at 120 frames per second on the iPhone, which is limited to 30 FPS on the Note 20 Ultra. Now, in terms of the battery performance, we're unsure in terms of the exact capacity of the new generation iPhones. We'll have to see when they actually come out to see how many milliamp hours they have, but we have 4,500 on the Note 20 Ultra, and Apple claims that we should get up to 20 hours of video playback time. We'll definitely test that out once we get our hands on both devices. Now, in terms of charging, both have Qi wireless and fast charging enabled, but the one big thing Apple did this year was take out the USB charging brick and the wired earbuds for one, environmental reasons, and probably for financial reasons, since they can save a bit of money and not package those in, and it'll save shipping costs, especially when you ship millions of these units. So that definitely makes some sense, but it kind of sucks for the consumer that those options are unavailable on the Apple side. Now, lastly, let's talk about some of the standout features on both platforms. On all of the new generation iPhone 12s, we have MagSafe. They've pretty much re-engineered the back of all their phones to have a magnetometer sensor which senses a magnetic field and instantly reacts to it. There's also a new NFC sensor, and this is an allowance to have full integration with a whole new array of accessories, including magnetically attaching cases, wallets, chargers, and probably a whole batch of external mounts for your car that you can utilize without having a case or any kind of special proprietary equipment built right inside the phone. Obviously, you still have all the benefits of the wireless charging, but none of the finickiness of having it in the right place with the right angle, with the magnets. Everything aligns perfectly every time you use it. So it definitely adds a level of convenience and also a good stream of revenue for new accessories for Apple. Now, the list of unique features on the Note 20 Ultra is certainly much longer than on the iPhone. We have the S Pen integration, a built-in FM radio, under-mount ultrasonic fingerprint scanner, stereo AKG speaker integration, wireless reverse charging capabilities up to 4.5 watts, as well as probably my favorite feature, the wireless Samsung DeX connectivity, which essentially turns your smartphone into a laptop or desktop PC. You simply have to connect it to an external monitor, keyboard and mouse, and there you go. You never need to use a laptop or desktop again for basic needs. But really on that, guys, that's really it. Definitely love to hear your thoughts in terms of which smartphone you would specifically prefer. Do you like the incredible features that both of them really offer? I'm going to be really curious to see what the cameras are going to look like side by side, and certainly the battery life is going to be interesting to do a head-to-head comparison. And we're certainly going to take a look at all those factors once we have the new gen iPhone in our grubby little hands. So make sure you have post notifications turned on, you're subscribed to the channel, and if you haven't done so already, please give us a thumbs up. Without you, none of this would be possible. So I look forward to seeing you guys real soon, and take care.